I'm a Tucson native, so I've been here for over half of those 100 years, a little beyond even over half. And I don't think there's anybody who's been in Tucson for any amount of time who ever got any kind of hankering to do a little art or had their child have to do a little bit of art that hasn't been in Posner somewhere, whether it was downtown or over on Park, and now we're going to start a great new chapter here. And 100 years of business, if you stop to think about it, is a real accomplishment, especially for a small business over these last 100 years. And it was great. We have today here, I saw him somewhere, Bob Posner, who is the grandson of the founder. And so it's so nice for you to come down here today. And if you get a minute to spend with him, he brought a little historic archive, which is pretty fascinating about Tucson, really one of the founding families of this community. And the other great thing what I found out when I got here today is it looks like this business has a real good chance to go another 100 years. Well, I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I will not be the mayor then. But the family has got their grandchildren behind the counter, interested in the business and loving the business, and we've all got to really love that. And so, and maybe I ought to do a little shout out to Jane and the Marshall Foundation, who has done a lot of work in this area and is transforming it. And whenever the Marshall Foundation can help a small business like this get into a location like this, you need to be applauded. Now with that, we do some proclaiming. There's a lot of whereases, I'll cut out a few. Whereas Posner's Art Store has been serving the University of Arizona, Pima Community College, and all of Tucson for 100 years. And whereas supporting your local businesses helps sustain the Tucson community, and art is a very important part of the lifestyle of our town, and Posner's always provided artists with all necessary materials. And whereas Posner's is one of the last original family-owned businesses in Tucson, passing down to 3 generations of friendly professional service providers. And whereas when movies have been filmed here, we've got to get more, Posner's has provided supplies to actors and movie sets. And whereas when internationally known artists visit our town, Posner's provides them with the quality service they require. And Posner's will continue to provide the Tucson community with well-known mom-and-pop friendly service. Therefore, I, Jonathan Rothschild, Mayor of the City of Tucson, do hereby proclaim October 5th, 2013, which is today, to be Posner's Art Store 100th anniversary in this community, and encourage all of our citizens to come and celebrate 100 years in Tucson with Posner's Art Store. Usually we make them say a thing or two then too and embarrass them. Is that right? You're just going to act like it. But anyway, go ahead.
I can speak a little bit. First of all, I appreciate the fact that you've kept the name going. And when I went to medical school, there was none here. I lived on Campbell, 729 North Campbell Avenue, which is now the Aquatic Center of the U of A. I went to the U of A undergraduate, but there was no med school here, so I had to go somewhere else, and eventually ended up at UCLA under the WICHE program. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that, the Western Interstate Commission of Higher Education. What that meant was the state paid those universities for professional degrees that they didn't offer, dentistry, medicine, I think veterinary too. And this store helped put me through school. And the deal was that if you came back to Arizona, your debt would be, you wouldn't have to pay the WICHE back. So I always wanted to get back here, but after about 10 years of training and 6 years back east, which led to my meeting my wife from Brooklyn, New York, it took a little bit of doing, but eventually I convinced her to consider Arizona. I wanted to come here. The opportunity at St. Luke's in Phoenix was a little bit better for me, and that's where I went. But this is my home. I was raised to not like Phoenix. It was always too hot, more humid, more conservative, and we got the medical school because there were cadavers easier to get from Nogales. I still call this my home, and when I see this, it just sort of brings tears to my eyes because I know name recognition is important, but for small businesses, it's incredible that we've been able to keep it going, and it really looks good. I'm not artistic. I never was that well. I never did that well in art, but at least I drew within the lines. And this is my wife Ellen and my daughter Jana. So she's Grandpa Philip's great-granddaughter. And I'll finish with something that sounds incestuous, but it's not. My great-grandpa Philip, the one who started this store. Just listen a little bit to the history that I showed the mayor. He comes from Russia to avoid going into the army there. And he comes to New York. He's a sign painter. He doesn't know the language. So he had to learn the language real quick. He did. Started painting signs. And he also was a gold leaf specialist. I remember him with some, I don't remember what it was, some type of stick. And he would take either 18 or 20 karat gold. And you say you have the original window with the gold leaf. And he would paint gold leaf, which is not in this write-up. I should have put it in there. And his wife had asthma. And being a physician, I know what they did. In New York, whenever you had asthma, they said go west. That's how they treated it. And so they tried LA, it didn't work out. He went to Phoenix in 1905 when there were 7,000 people there. He had been invited there to paint the Arizona Territorial Fair signs. And he said, gee, this is pretty nice here. He brought his whole family, at that time it was 4 children, and they lived there for a year, then they went back to LA, and eventually he said, I'm going to move back to Arizona, and he moved here in 1913, and he opened up a sign shop, which my Uncle Isidore went with him, and he opened up the art store. And it was on Stone, and one was on Scott Street, I think, downtown. I don't remember that one. There's a great truck that they had with a paint can on it, which we still have. And then he eventually moved up to Congress Street. That one I remember, and then the one on Park. And the incestuous part is, listen to this now. He was married and divorced eventually. He goes back to New York and remembers that a woman there that he grew up with in Brest-Litovsk, Russia. You historians might remember that there was a Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in World War I, but anyway, he remembers that he grew up with her and that she might be available because he had heard that she had divorced. And he met her, and they got together eventually, and eventually he had to convince her too, history repeats itself, to come out to Arizona. And she did, and they married. And then she brought a single daughter by the name of Beatrice with her, among another daughter, Florence, who's already married. And my grandfather moved out here, obviously, he was already here. One of his sons fell in love with one of my grandmother's daughters.